Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our visiting lecture today with Universiti Poly-Tech Malaysia. Welcome to the Honorable Dr. Ain Syazmeen Ahmad Zaki. For the topic today is from Boardroom to Breakroom, Understanding Formal and Informal Communication in Management. Today's session is being live streamed on Universiti STEKOM YouTube channel. And for today event, we will read our agenda this afternoon. First, we will start with class presentation by Dr. Ain and continue with Q&A session and time for picture for documentation, and last time is closing. So we will start for this class today by Dr. Ain. You can start this session today. Thank you.
All right, thank you for having me. I will share my screen for a while. Okay. All right. So I'll start with my presentation. Thank you for having me. I hope you guys had a very great lunch just now. Okay. All right. So today's presentation is about the informal and formal communication in management. So these are the presentation outline that we are going to cover for today. I'm going to introduce a bit about the concept of formal and informal communication, and then we'll move on to comparison and contrast, and I will conclude the benefit of having both formal and informal communication. Okay, so before we start, we need to know what is definition of communication. So communication is the process of transmitting a message to the receiver in order to obtain a response. So this process which a person, a group, or organization, also known as a sender, will transmit some information or also known as a message to another person or group or organization, which known as the receiver. So let's move on to the diagram. Here is the communication process. As you can see, there's a sender, there's a message, as well as the receiver. Okay, in order to in order to fully understand the process and the elements of communication, you can see here is the messenger. So messenger usually will give information and input about what are they going to say in terms of the message, regardless any kind of medium such as speaking, writing, graphic, video, etc. to the recipient. So the recipient need to understand what the messenger are trying to portray or trying to transfer the information of. Okay, so here is the basic concept of formal and informal communication. So formal communication usually will communicate through predefined channel set of organization, while informal communication usually doesn't have any formal channel that you have to follow. Okay. So by having this communication, it can enable people to share their emotion, opinion, and knowledge and thought. All right. So communication can the formal communication is also known as the official communication, where the sharing of information between people who work for the same company, but they are at various level of organizational structure. Okay, so communication the formal communication typically involve more formal language than informal communication, where usually when we would like to characterize the informal communication, they will use the informal language. And then the formal communication used in a professional and academic settings to provide information and discuss topics in a structured and organized manner, while the informal communication often is not backed up by any predetermined channel and can happen anywhere within the organization. All right, so I'm going to move on to the formal communication in detail. Okay, so formal communication is usually where it has a hierarchical command structure, meaning the higher ranking personnel frequently use this method to convey various messages and directives to those they supervise. So this communication method usually is very timely and systematic in flow. All right. So the direction can be in terms of vertical and horizontal. So in informal communication, there are two types of communication, which are the vertical communication and horizontal, as you can see from the slides. The one with dotted line is actually the horizontal communication, while the one with the bold line here is the vertical communication. Okay, so vertical communication is the flow of information or directive either upwards or downwards within the hierarchical organization structure. It will help to exercise control, improve coordination, provide feedback. For example, when a manager sending a memo to the employee or employee are reporting a problem to the manager, that is the example of vertical communication. So in vertical communication, we also have the up-down communication as well as the top-down communication. So downward communication is where a manager will send an email to their team members, for example, informing them about new project, assignments, or any deadline expectation from it. So this is the situation where the manager will give information to the employees. While outward communication is where the employee will communicate anything regarding the work condition to the superior. For example, an employee submits a performance appraisal report to their managers, highlighting their achievement and challenges in the past year. Okay. Moving on to the horizontal communication. So horizontal communication is where the flow of information and ideas usually amongst individual or group in the same level of organization hierarchy. It does help to share information, to foster collaboration, to promote understanding. So there are two types of communication in horizontal communication, which are the horizontal and diagonal. So horizontal communication happens when two department heads are having a meeting to discuss about the progress or issue of a joint progress, and they can coordinate their effort better. So this happens when two departments work together, while the diagonal is communication happens when a marketing executive, for instance, contact the finance analyst from accounting finance departments to request some data analysis on the sales or revenue. So diagonal communication does happen when it does intersect between two departments. Okay. So these are the example of vertical and horizontal communication, where usually in the vertical communication, delegation of tasks to the subordinate by the superior. This is the horizontal communication where the head or the people on the certain department will work together, or inter-department will work together in terms of completing certain goals they need to complete. And these are the channel or example of formal communication happens. They can be in form of business email, memos, reports, letters, presentation, and formal meeting. So this kind of situation where formal communication happens is usually when they try to convey some rules, some policies, procedure, and instruction to the employee. So everything that are formally documented must be formally distributed to the employees as well. So these are the form and medium that company can use in order to convey these messages or information to the employees. Moving on to the informal communication. So in informal communication, the mode of exchanging information, ideas, and opinions are usually very unstructured, very free. So it does occur outside of formal channel or outside of official hierarchy, and often takes place among the peers, the colleague who have personal relationship or have shared interests together. So informal communication can take form in such a casual conversation, gossip, small talks, nonverbal cues such as body language, facial expression, and even some body cues. Okay, so informal communication is important in organization in order to foster relationship, having a very good relationship among the colleagues, share information, and most importantly, to resolve conflict in the workplace. However, there's the drawbacks as well, the challenges in terms of the informal communication, where sometimes there's a noise, distortion, or even overload and conflict. So it is very essential for an employee in the organization to make sure that to use it effectively and appropriately, depending on the situation of the audience. Okay, so any kind of communication informally regarding their personal life, their professional life, or other matter is considered as informal communication. So informal communication, also known as a grapevine. Grapevine is an informal interpersonal channel of information not officially sanctioned by the organization, where we have 4 types of grapevine communication. Okay, the first one is a single strand. We have gossip strand, we have change, we have probability change, and we have cluster, and I'm going to cover one by one. Right, so this is the first type of informal communication or grapevine communication, which is a single strand. So single strand is a communication in which one person will pass the information to another person, and another person will pass the information, and the process will go on. So single strand is where one person gives the information to one person, and then the other person will give the information to one person as well. Okay, so in a single strand, usually when, for example, if an employee hear a rumor about the company is planning to lay off some worker and tells another employee, and then another employee will tell another employee, and so on until the rumors reaches everyone in the company. So the single strand is where one person give information to one person, and that one person will continue the process until it becomes bigger. Okay. The next one is gossip. So gossip is often used to convey information that is interesting and non-job related. Usually the news must be very interesting to hear. It starts when a person tells something to a group of people, and then they pass the information to some more people. In this way, the communication is actually passed to everyone. Okay, if you can see the diagram here, from one person, the information being passed to a lot of people. So from these people, they will share the information to more people. So this is where the gossip change happen. For example, a group of employees, let's say they gather around the water cooler and gossip about their personal life of their managers, such as their relationship, their hobbies, their habits. So from this water cooler session, it turns into another gossip for another people to hear. Okay, and the next informal communication is the probability change. So this communication happens when a person randomly chooses some person to pass on the information, which is of a little interest but not important. So probability is where an employee will tell people randomly, and probably that random people may not convey the information to other person. So this probability change where sometimes probably a situation where an employee receives a promotion or shares the news with random co-workers, and probably the co-workers will share it with another random co-workers, and so on, until some people in the company knows about the promotion, and some don't. Some don't even know, because for the probability that the share not being shared with another person is very high as well. Moving on to the cluster chain. So cluster chain is the last type of informal communication. This is where the person tells the information to a few chosen individual. Usually they will pass on this information to the person who they trust. And from this specially chosen individual, they will try to obtain some favors. So usually the information that being conveyed is interesting, job related, and most up to date. So in faster change situation. For example, an employee finds out that the company is launching a new product and tells a few of their close friends in their company, who will later tell a few of their close friends and so on. So these communication and process will happen and reach to a small group of people who are interested in the product. So that's how the cluster change happens. So these are some method and channel that being used in the informal communication. For instance, the informal face-to-face interaction, the phone calls, text messages, social media posts, networking, and instant messages. So these are the situation of informal communication where it is very beneficial in order to build a good relationship with the co-workers, resolving any conflicts, and as well as generating ideas. In contemporary organizational design, I believe a lot of the leaders in contemporary company, they use informal communication more compared to the formal communication in order for them to generate idea and get feedback from their employees. So these are the comparison and the contrast of formal and informal communication. Firstly, firstly is the meaning, as you can see. So the formal communication is the interchange of the communication where they have a predefined channel, okay, as compared to the informal where they don't have any does not follow any channel. For example, it can freely move in the company. The communication stretches from all directions. Compared to the formal communication, we only have two types of communication just now, which are the horizontal communication and the vertical communication. All right, the next one is in terms of names. So formal communication, also known as the official communication, and the informal communication, also known as the grapevine communication. Why do you think it's called grapevine? If you actually Google the grapevine, it says it does actually do flat out very easily. That's why the term is actually very related to the informal communication. And in terms of reliability, formal communication is is more reliable compared to the informal communication. This is, I believe, because formal communication has the evidence where usually the communication is generally written or documented in order to make it as a present evidence as compared to the informal communication where usually we don't have any no documentary evidence. And in terms of speed, informal communication spread very fast, of course, especially in the terms of gossips, where the informal communication, they tend to be spread very slow, while it is become very time consuming for the formal communication in order to get the response from employees, while informal communication is not time consuming because it can increase in small talk. Some of the advantage of formal communication, it is very effective due to timely and systematic flow of the information where we can assess the information, we can get the information, we can retrieve the information again, as compared to the disadvantages where it will create distortion of information because the long chain of communication. So in order for the communication to happen, they must follow the chain of command, especially when the company is having a very having a lot of layer in terms of hierarchical structure. While the advantage of informal communication, they are very efficient because employee can discuss work-related problem at any time. It can save cost and time for the organization as well. But the most major disadvantage of informal communication, where it can be where it can spread the rumors, because most probably because of the word of mouth, and this kind of information usually when it passes to someone else and someone else will pass it to another person, that is where the rumors will spread very rapid. And the flow of information usually is very free in the organizations. Once you get the information, you can just pass it to another person that you know. Okay. In conclusion, formal and informal communication are very essential for and complementary both modes in both communication in management. They have different characteristics, advantage, disadvantages, application. They have their own purpose. They have their own audience, their context, and the tone of message. And as we have discussed, formal communication is more structured, official, and professional, and it is usually used to convey information in an efficient and clear way. So it is suitable for situation where accuracy, documentation, and authority are important. This is where a lot of companies will use formal communication when they want to convey any rules, policy, procedure, or even instruction to the employee in the company. But informal communication is more casual, spontaneous, and relational, and usually it will use to build rapport and facilitate conversation in social setting. So it is very beneficial for situation where creativity, collaboration, and conflict resolution is needed. Okay. So here are the tips that a leader or even an employee in the organization can use in order for them to use formal and informal communication effectively and appropriately in management, so that they can avoid any miscommunication or any misinformation about what they are trying to say, or that they're trying to portray to. So in order to use formal and formal communication, they need to be aware of their communication style and adapt to the situation and the audience. For example, use formal communication when addressing a senior manager or a client, and use informal communication when chatting with a colleague or a friend. And they can also use the right communication channel and method depending on the message. For example, if let's say for written communication, any importance or official methods such as use emails or memos or report. While if let's say you just want to convey informal communication, you can use just you can just have a chat or phone calls or social media, and etc. So having a balance between both formal and informal communication is very important in order to make sure you have a very effective communication between both employees and employees. For example, use a formal communication to set goals and expectation of a project, and use informal communication to foster teamwork and feedback among the team project member. And the last tip that can use is to respect the boundaries and preferences of others when communicating. For example, avoid using informal communication that is too casual, have a lot of slang or offensive, and avoid using formal communication that is too rigid or too personal or too bureaucratic. I think that's all from me. Thank you so much. So I give it to the moderator.
Okay, thank you so much for Dr. Nur Ain for the wonderful information and sharing your knowledge. Okay, for all participants, if you have any question for the speaker, please add them to the chat or you can raise your hand. Okay, for first question, we have question from Miss Paulina Kinanti. Could you elaborate on the dynamic between formal and informal communication in management, particularly how they manifest in boardroom setting versus more casual environment like breakroom? How do these communication style influence organizational culture and decision-making process? That's all, thank you. And also the question already read in group chat, please.
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Paulina Kinanti. Okay, sure. I'll try to explain the differences between both. Okay. So again, the dynamic, if of course, have been mentioned earlier in the box. Okay, so formal communication is often where the sharing of official information about the workplace through any channel that's set by the organization. The channel that I've been mentioned earlier is, for example, the memo, the email, the reports, even the presentation of the in the meeting, any meeting. So it is used to convey information in a very professional way where they can use this information, where they can bring the information in the boardroom setting, okay, where they will maintain their efficient in a very professional way and maintain their level of hierarchical or authority among the participant in the boardroom. So formal communication, of course, often used in the boardroom setting where leaders from different business units, for example, use standard agendas to review their concern, how they are going to coordinate some responses. So it's also used in order for them to, for example, if they wanted to communicate some procedures or even the policy to the lower level management. Okay, so in terms of the boardroom, usually this is where all the business leaders subunit will have a meeting, and they must make sure that they will have certain agenda, a standard agenda that they need to fulfill in the boardroom. While in terms of the casual environment, the break room. So this is where usually the informal communication happens. So informal communication is a very laid back and structured manner, and usually employee will use a very informal language. So it does not have any channel, and it can happen everywhere within the organization. So usually this type of communication is used to build a relationship, to facilitate a conversation, for instance, in the break room, so it can be beneficial when developing new ideas. Not necessarily discussing about job related issues or goals, but the primary goals of this communication is actually to preserve or establish a very good relationship among colleagues. The information the Grapevine communication is the most efficient, is actually most efficient communication that can be used in order to actually do the brainstorming or get an idea or getting a feedback from the employees. And do I
Okay, thank you for answering. And then question from live chat YouTube from Diarami, how to create and apply the technique of understanding the informal and formal business meeting on communication, be punctual and also has such skin of the open the border of the gateway. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your question, but I guess this question is a bit general and broad. I'll try to give some tips on how to create this fantastic for you guys, for you to understand the formal and informal business meeting communication. Okay. Okay. So in informal and informal meeting, you need to know the goals or as well as expectation from the meeting. So you are setting up um, a business meeting, especially on business meeting, especially on communication. Okay. So you need to identify what is the purpose or the context of the meeting. So you need to know the participant as well. What are their roles in the relationship and how much do we have time for the meeting? So these are the factors that will help you to determine the appropriate communication style and tone for the meeting. So if let's say you are doing the business meeting for certain goals that you need to do probably a joint venture with another company, so you need to know what kind of tone and setting you are going to use to in the meeting room. And you need to, of course, prepare an agenda for the meeting. So agenda is a list of topics or items that you will need to discuss and address in the meeting. So by having this kind of agenda and planning, you will keep the meeting focused, organized, and productive. So this agenda should be shared with the participant before the meeting even starts. And even you as a meeting organizer, you can ask their feedback and input. You should assign the roles and responsibility to the participant to make sure that you know who will lead the meeting, who will do the note taking, and who will present some information that you needed in the meeting. Of course, punctuality is one of the important business ethics that you need to practice. Okay, punctuality is of course a sign of respect and professionalism. So it does show that you value the time and contribution of the participant. So it also helps you to stay to disrupt the meeting where at least the participant will need to be in the scheduled time 10 minutes before it started. So you should also inform the participant if you are expected to be late or absent for some reason. The next stage you can do is to communicate effectively during the meeting. So following the agenda and the protocol of the meeting, whether formal or informal, you should use clear and concise language. So you should listen actively and attentively to the participant. You should ask relevant questions and provide any feedback if you think that you can add on. And the most important thing in order for the communication to happen effectively is to avoid distraction and interruption. And body language and gesture is also the most important factor that need to be looked at in order to make sure that the effective communication happens. And the last thing probably you can do is to have a follow-up meeting where you should summarize the main point of the account meeting and thank all the participants for their attendance and participation. This is where you should send the follow-up email to the participation, attaching any meeting notes or any minutes of meeting action or deadline that the participant need to follow. This is why usually the leaders will need to monitor the progress and result of the action that have been discussed earlier in the meeting. So I hope these are the technique that you can use in order to conduct a business meeting on communication, and of course be punctual and have a very open the border of the way. Okay, I think that's all from me.
Okay, thank you so much for answering. I think it's very clear answer from Professor Raf. Yeah, before I close this event, for all participants, please open your camera. I will take a picture on the count of three. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one, 1, 2, 3. Smile. Thank you for your keen cooperation. Okay, finally, we come to the end of visiting lecture today. We would like to thank you for Dr. Nur Ain for the wonderful information and sharing your knowledge. We hope this information will be beneficial for all participants. At least we hope to have more collaboration in the future with Universiti Poly-Tech Malaysia. The visiting lecture for today and here. We have to see you soon. Thank you and have a nice day. Thank you so much for Miss Nur Ain. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.